It has been a while, man. But it's been a while since you've been on the show. Caught up with you not too terribly long ago at the Fairfax Bear Trip. I know that you've been out traveling the world, and now that things are kind of reopening, have you noticed that people's appetite for health is as ravenous as ever?
Oh, it's crazy, Chuck. I literally just got back yesterday from the Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I spoke at the Tulsa Bench Fest, and there was probably couple thousand people there. I mean, just amazing Q&A, and people are so hungry. No pun intended, but they're so hungry for this information. And the we've been kind of bottled up with travel the last few years too, as far as medical conferences. So I've got a pretty busy travel schedule coming up the rest of the summer, which is great. This is too important a message not to share with the rest of the world.
Absolutely. So let's serve up some of that health knowledge, pun definitely intended there, and open up the doctor's mailbag. And let's begin with that question about calories on a whole food plant-based diet. How can you make sure that you're getting enough? Question from Robbie Lynn. Flat out, how do you know if you're getting enough calories while eating a whole food plant-based diet?
Well, the simple answer is if you're not losing weight, then you're getting enough calories. Right? So because at a fundamental level, are calories in, calories out, kind of determined. That's not exactly true. We can talk about that in a second. So as long as you're not losing weight, you're going to get plenty of calories. Now, the challenge oftentimes comes in people that are very athletic or who burn a lot of calories every day, because in fact that can be a challenge. Getting the kind of normal 1,800 calories a day, maybe 2,000 calories a day that the average person might need is pretty straightforward. But when your calorie needs jump up above that, say you're training for a marathon or you're very active, very active lifestyle, it can be challenging. And the reason is that, as you said in the intro, it has to do with that calorie density versus the nutrient density. Because plant-based foods are so nutrient dense, you feel full without getting all the calories, and that's a good thing. They are calorically self-limiting. A whole plant-based diet. I mean, I imagine, you turn on a movie or a ball game, for a bag of Cheetos, how hard would it be to eat 1,000 calories of Cheetos for the things don't eat around? Not hard at all, right? Try to eat 1,000 calories of apples or blueberries or broccoli in a meat column. You're talking 9 to 10 pounds of food. So it can be a little bit of a challenge. And because, you all that fiber and stuff, you get full. And so for people that are struggling to maintain weight, leading a very active lifestyle, there are a lot of strategies you can use to kind of be sure you are getting enough calories. So, frequent snacks, you add in some of the healthier, a little bit higher fat foods like avocados and nuts while you're snacking. Instead of using kind of the 3 traditional meals a day, 3 meals plus a mid-morning, mid-afternoon, maybe a small snack. So there's lots of ways to be sure you're getting equivalent calories. And if you're worried about it, oftentimes, this comes up. And oftentimes patients will say, I don't think I'm getting enough calories, I'm not getting enough protein or whatever. Sometimes I will have them actually track their food intake for a couple of days on an app like MyFitnessPal or Use It, or one I like to call Chronometer, where you literally just enter everything you're in. And most people are quite pleasantly surprised. And in fact, they are getting more calories, more than enough calories, they're getting more than enough protein. So most of the time, these concerns are, they're just concerns, and in reality, all of your nutritional needs are being met.
You talk about caloric density versus nutrient density, and just this past weekend, I was crunching some numbers. I was trying to figure out something clever to do on Instagram, and I'm like, okay, well, famously with that 10,000 calorie daily diet of mine, how many pounds of spinach would I have to eat for that to equal 10,000 calories? And it was somewhere in the ballpark of 100 pounds.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's just a ridiculously high number, and there's no way myself or anyone else is going to come close to 100 pounds of spinach in a day. It's just not possible.
So I'd be curious to know what that number is for 52 donuts.
Oh, it ain't 100 pounds, man. I mean, maybe 10 donuts? I don't know, man.
It's like 10 donuts, right?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, we were just talking a little bit about measuring nutrients. A follow-up question from Maria. You were talking about those apps. Is that the best way for someone to measure their nutrient intake, or is that somewhat overblown?
Well, so first of all, the reason that our brains are not very good at all this, right? Because you have to remember that all of the brain power that we have around food evolved to keep us from starving to death in a world of calorie scarcity, right? So basically, we evolved to eat anything we could eat whenever we found it, right? And so we didn't really have to worry about, oh, am I getting too many calories, too much fat, on and on and on, because we just ate it when we found it. In the modern world, we don't longer have that. So our brains are pretty good at looking at a plate of food and saying, yeah, this looks pretty healthy. But over the course of a few days or a week or a month, trying to figure out exactly how many grams of fiber you got and am I consuming too much fat, our brains are terrible at that. And the other reason that our brains are not very good at this is the simple fact that many of our food choices occur outside of our conscious awareness. And again, that's by evolutionary design. If you had to think about walking, for example, contract my quads, flex my hip, and my knees, you would walk right past the right berry, you wouldn't see the leopard, and you wouldn't have very long. And so our brains have all the mechanisms, we get this way past, whether it be walking or eating or the model of and very quickly our subconscious brain takes over. So we forget that all of our food choices, food we like, food we don't like, how we cook the food, environmental triggers to eat the food, emotional triggers to eat the food, all that stuff, becomes automated very quickly. You make a tremendous number of these kind of subconscious food choices they almost become like free food because they never register. And the other problem we have around food is that, we're pretty good at regulating the trees, but we oftentimes miss the forest. 10, 12 years ago, if you asked me if I eat healthy, I'd say, what's there? Low fat, very lean, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and I try not to eat too much ice cream with moderation. Right? Well, a lot of the disconnect that led me kind of down the path to ill health, had to do with that very fact. Monday, the nurses were cooking me off, and Tuesday, I was going to Dr. Brown's, Wednesday, I go out for a cheeseburger, Thursday, someone's birthday, I take an ice cream. Friday rolls around, I'm thinking, wow, I ate really healthy this week, I only ate cookies once. So again, that's why if we really want to get a handle on exactly what we're eating, I think it is a useful exercise to use a food tracking app. And they're actually quite accurate. They're very tedious. It's not something I recommend doing all the time. But maybe take a 24, 48-hour window over the course of a couple days, enter everything you need, and just spot check yourself and really be sure that you're meeting your requirements. And frankly, for people on a whole food plant-based diet, I only have them check two things. And that's their fiber intake, which needs to be close to 50 grams a day if you can get. That's a lot. And your fat intake, 30, maybe 35 grams a day, which is not very much. And if you hit those two goals, then you're doing better than most, and you're going to be getting all the nutrients and all the calories.
You are spot on as far as like rattling off all of those various treats that you would have on every single day. But then when Friday comes, I was really good. I only had cookies once. That's really right. But you forgot about the cakes and the ice cream and everything else. And I've heard about that time and again. And by the way, while you were giving that answer, pardon me for just kind of stepping back and tuning you out for a second. I went to the Krispy Kreme website and I looked up the nutritional value of the donut. So it's 190 calories per donut. So that's roughly 52 of those bad boys to get up to 10,000 calories. So I think, theoretically, somebody could eat 52 of those.
Sure.
In a
day.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I don't think they would feel very well.
No, they certainly wouldn't.
But it's doable.
So I want to throw in about Krispy Kreme donuts. This is very interesting to me. So, one of the problems with eating healthy is us trying to overcome this evolutionary inertia around not starving to death, right? So we're born with an inborn preference for sweet. And one of the theories is that if it's sweet, it's probably not poisonous. If it's bitter or sour, it might be. If the alkaloids and such that make those sweets bitter are actually poisons the plants make in low doses to keep away predators. So we have a preference for sweet. In fact, we make dopamine when we see or think about something sweet, which makes us feel good. We have an inborn preference for things that are fat, because fat has 9 calories per gram, while carbohydrate and protein only have 4 calories. So the more fatty foods we had to find, the less food we had to find, because we got twice as many calories, right? We also have a preference to spend as few calories as possible to get more food than we possibly can. And the reason is If you need 1,000 calories to survive tomorrow, and you don't have to spend any energy to get it, you only have to find that 1,000 calories. But if you have to spend 1,000 calories to find 1,000, now you get to find 2,000. So think about what that means in the modern world. It means that the drive to a Krispy Kreme is the most highly evolved food source on the planet, right? And I guarantee you that the people at Krispy Kreme know that, right? And that's why many of the times these food companies hijack the fat and the salt and the sugar content of the food because they know that's exactly what our brains are looking for. So you're onto something with those Krispy Kreme donuts, right?
Listen to that man. He knows what he's talking about. Krispy Kreme wasn't necessarily my jam, but there's a very specific reason why I crave Taco Bell literally every single day. Those recipes are fine-tuned to make you crave them like no other. Let's get back on a healthier track. I want to go back to still talking about caloric density now and making sure that we don't lose too much weight, but doing this in a healthier fashion. Question from Indigo, wondering whether pasta or avocados are more likely to make a person gain weight.
Well, so one way to think about when we're thinking about our food choices, we think about our food like we think about money, right? When we have extra money, we want to invest it in our financial future. What we're looking for is a positive ROI, positive return on investment, right? Well, that's how we think about our calories, because every calorie you put in your mouth is either an investment in your health future or it's not. And what we want is a positive return on investment. So let's just say you have 100 calories to spend in the moment. You can spend it on pasta or avocados or beans or whatever, olive oil because you're now healthy, or chicken breast or whatever. So what's the nutritional ROI these things look like? Well, when we spend 100 calories on pasta, so pasta is, depending on what type of pasta you're eating, is fairly highly refined. So you take a whole grain of food of wheat. It has the bran on it, which has fiber, and it has the wheat germ, which has healthy omega-3s and vitamins and nutrients. And then you have the kernel of the wheat, which is where all the carbohydrates are. And in general, most pastas, there are some whole grain pastas out there, but when we eat pasta, we kind of stripped away all the other stuff, and we're just eating the ground up kernel, which has been mixed with some water and made into a dough and rolled into pasta. So what's your nutritional return on investment on 100 calories of pasta? Well, it's mainly just sugar, right? There's no fiber, any vitamins that are in there to add it back because they threw away all the vitamins. When you see the word enriched wheat flour, that's what that means actually. It means that they threw away the good parts of the wheat, the kernel of wheat, and they had to spray the vitamins back on it, right? Now you take an avocado. Now, avocado is nutrient dense. I mean, it's somewhat much calorically dense because it's fat, but most of those fats are healthy fats. But what else are you getting in vitamin C, which you don't get in pasta? You're getting fiber, which you don't get. You get a little bit in pasta, especially whole grain, but not nearly as much as in an avocado. There's lots of vitamin C and vitamins and nutrients. So I think the idea here is you want to eat food as close to the ground as it grew, if you will, or the tree in the case of an avocado. So now, avocados and nuts are two whole foods you do have to be a little bit careful because again, they are much more calorically dense than many of the other whole food choices that you can make. But in the context of what I said a minute ago about how at least I think about a healthful diet, within the context of limiting your fat intake to maybe 30-35 grams a day, avocados are fine. What you probably don't want to do is just get a whole avocado in a spoon and eat it, which is I've been known to do. But a slice of avocado on a burrito or cubed up into a salad, a quarter of an avocado, something like that, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Pasta you have to be a little bit careful with. And the other problem with pasta is the way you eat it, right? I mean, if you're going to eat pasta, that should be like 1/4 of the dish. Pasta is the star of the dish, typically, right? And that's how we eat the big, huge plate of pasta, and the olive oil and all that kind of stuff. So I think pasta's okay. You want to get as true whole grain pasta as you can get, but you want to make that a side dish. And avocados are fine, but you have to be a little bit careful there as well.
Is there a particular pasta that you would recommend as being the best option, whether it be maybe chickpea or whole wheat or whatever the case?
Yeah, so you just have to look at the nutrition label, and what part of the problem with whole grain pasta, whole grain bread, whole grain whatever, has to do with the way the USDA allows labeling laws. So you don't have to have a lot of true whole grain and pasta to call it whole grain pasta. It's mixed in with enriched wheat flour as well. But you know, it's a different mouthfeel, right? Because they typically have a lot more gluten in them, so it's a lot stiffer. You don't get that tender mouthfeel you do like al dente pasta that's you know, made out of durum wheat or whatever. So I don't know I don't have a particular brand that I use, but I'm very careful with the grains. And frankly, I just don't eat a ton of pasta anymore. I mean, just because of the nature of my diet.
Right.
And you know, they do make, you know, you can get lentil pasta, chickpea pasta. My experience of those is if you're looking for pasta, it's not the same experience. It's different. It's a noodle, but you know, thinking you're going to get the same thing your Italian grandmother made when you're using red lentil pasta is probably not going to. You're probably not going to be that same experience.
You a zoodle guy? You like the zucchini noodles?
I do zoodles. I do, especially you know, as we're coming into summer and zucchini and things are all are out there. I do have a zoodle maker, and I do use zoodle. That's a great way to make a pasta dish with almost no calories. I mean, you talk about nutrient dense. That's a great way to do that, actually, for sure.
Yeah, and the marinara just blends so well with it too.
Right.
It's
Right.
just tomatoes and zucchini. I mean, they pair well together naturally. So why wouldn't this work with the zoodles and the pasta sauce? And it absolutely is
Right.
like a marriage made in heaven.
Right.
Brandy has a question. You were just talking about nuts. And she's like, okay, well, I was in a debate over the weekend talking about almonds versus peanuts. We're a couple of nutrition nerds. Which is the healthier of the two, Dr. Loomis?
Well, like many food choices that we make, you know, some aspects of almonds are healthier and some aspects of peanuts are healthier. You know, for example, you know, one may have a little more fiber than the other. One may have a little more of this vitamin or that vitamin. One may have a little more fat than the other. Yeah. So I think they both are helpful and they both play a role. But here again, when we think about how we eat, you know, I would hope that you're not just surviving on peanuts. You know, I eat peanuts. I like to make Thai food, for example, and there's oftentimes there's peanuts in those dishes. Sometimes I'll make like a peanut butter, a West African peanut butter, sweet potato stew or something like that. I also use a lot of almonds though, as well, right? You know, so I use almond butter, things like that. So I think the answer here is that they both have their pros and cons. You have to be careful with both because of what I said earlier about they are quite caloric against because of the extra fat. But I think they both play a role in a healthful diet, and they both have their you know, I don't think you could argue that one is healthier than the other. If you go line by line, it probably balances out when you get to the bottom line. So I think they're both equally as helpful.
So Maurice just sent me a message on Instagram. I'm at Chuck Carroll WLC, and she's like, "You guys are killing me with all of this donut talk today." She's like, "So listen, I have a sweet tooth. If I'm not going to eat regular sugar like that, what do you recommend for using as a sweetener?"
Well, so you know, so if you're looking for a true sweetener, that you know, most of the sweeteners are refined, right? So I do use a little bit of maple syrup sometimes if I'm making one of the things I like to make is an avocado silken tofu chocolate mousse, and I'll put a little bit of maple syrup in there. Now it is, you know, highly processed. There's no fiber. Not highly processed. It's somewhat processed, but there's no fiber in it. You know, Dr. Greger, I think Michael Greger on his website nutritionfacts.org did a video about this a number of years ago. His conclusion was date sugar, because date sugar basically it's just whole dates which have been dehydrated and ground up, and so they still have the fiber in it. But the problem is, depending on what you're trying to switch, that's great for things like oatmeal and things like that. But if you're trying to sweeten your tea or coffee, that doesn't work so well because it's not soluble. The fiber is obviously not soluble.
Maybe not that you could stir it
You know,
and still drink it.
there are some plant-based sweeteners like stevia. There's some research suggests it may create some health problems. It's not very robust. I think worst case scenario, something like that, or monk fruit sweetener, that's another one people use. But again, what's interesting to me is that, I've been plant-based almost 10, 11 years now. My palate has changed, and I don't really crave and need all that sweetness that used to drive me to put sugar in everything, and sugar in my coffee, and sugar in my tea, and sugar in my oatmeal, and all that kind of stuff. I've kind of lost that. I think a lot of people experience that. But again, the other thing that I use sometimes for sweetener, if I'm making even in more savory dishes, is date paste, which is just, you take medjool dates and you grind them up with a little water and boil it, and then you can put that in a container, put in your refrigerator, things like that. Date paste is another thing that I use. Sometimes, obviously, if I'm looking to sweeten up a smoothie, I'll just throw a couple of dates in there. That's a great source of sweetness as well. And for snacks and things like that, I'll take, like this time with grapes, I'll just put grapes in the freezer. And I want a sweet snack, I'll just eat some frozen grapes. So that's a great way to get that sweetness that we all crave on occasion without using a bunch of more highly processed sugar.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of dates. Those things are so versatile, and you're spot on. I've been known to throw a medjool date or two in a smoothie, and it just never goes wrong. But you're funny though about how the palate evolves over time. I remember, I'm still to this day, because I still identify as a recovering food addict, I'm still to this day just petrified of eating anything like ice cream, like I once did, right? So I won't do that. But I remember one time just having a sip of grape juice, right? And I was just like, ugh, it was just way too much. It was just like hyper sweet to the point where it did not taste good to me at all.
Right.
Like, as a matter of fact, it was disgusting.
Same thing. Salt, too. Salt's the other thing. You get rid of the salt, and all of a sudden things that, you eat a piece of bread sometimes, and you can taste the salt in it, right? That you never tasted before. Because when our palate when we clean out our palate and let it reset, things that used to get that salty taste, we were so sensitive to it. You take the salt shaker and shake. Well, now just a touch of salt gives it's more than enough. And it's really interesting how our palates reset after we adapt it.
I put a whole tablespoon of each in
All right, Mike is joining us a little bit late. Wants to go back to, we were talking about the caloric density and weight loss a little bit earlier in the show. Mike is wondering how he can lose weight while still maintaining muscle mass while eating a vegan diet.
So as long as you're not starving yourself to death, you will make. We don't burning muscle is when we're done. So let me back up. So the way we fuel ourselves when we're through the day is we have glycogen stored in our muscle and liver cells. We use that for energy, to get through the day when we move. Obviously, the more movement you have, if you're running and things like that, the more glycogen you burn. And then we have a lot of fat. So we have enough glycogen to run for about 2 hours. We have enough fat to run for about a week. So we use our fat stores. We don't start burning muscle until you're done with all that, right? So you burned all your glycogen, and then we switch to fat. And when you use up all your fat, that's when we start switching over to muscle. So unless you're on some crazy ultra low calorie diet, you don't really have to worry about losing muscle mass per se, as long as you continue to exercise, to work out and do a little lifting. Now, the more common problem I hear is how you gain muscle mass and you lose weight, right? So how do you put on lean body mass? And again, I think it's eating a healthy diet and burning that fat preferentially. And there's ways, there's strategies you can do that. My friends Matt Frazier and Robert Cheek, in their book Plant-Based Athlete, they have some very specific advice on how to do exactly that, how to lose body fat and gain lean muscle mass. And there's some strategies you can do to do that without where you're getting both of those goals without going crazy, without some crazy extreme diet.
Yeah, and let me just take a second and add to that from the patient perspective. And I think I know where Mike is coming from, because this was still one of my big concerns when I was losing weight. I was like, I don't want to lose all of my muscle mass. As a matter of fact, that was even like an excuse I would tell myself why I should not even try to lose weight, was because I would no longer be as strong as I once was. And so, am I honestly as strong as I was when I was 420 pounds? No. But at the end of the day, I'm also not carrying around 420 pounds with every step. It would be impossible to keep up with that. So don't let that be a stumbling block for you. Like, there's just no reason, and you're going to be okay. You're still going to be plenty strong, even if you're not walking around with as much weight as you once did. You're going to feel so good, you're not even going to care if you're benching 20 pounds less. It's just not going to matter to you.
I mean, that's kind of crazy to think that you're leg pressing 400 pounds every time you stood up.
Like, I used to be able to leg press like 1,500 pounds when I would actually make an attempt and go to the gym. And I mean, but I don't think I can do that today. But I wouldn't trade it for the world either.
Right. That's what I was going to say. If the choice is weigh 400 pounds, leg press 1,500 pounds, or weigh whatever you weigh now and leg press 200 pounds, I'm just telling you, you're in a much better place today than you were then, right?
No question about it. I'm around to leg press whatever. I'm not sure if I had stayed on that track, if I would even be around to leg press a pound. I want to switch gears a little bit. This is a really interesting question from Joe, and honestly, Dr. Loomis, it made me laugh initially because I was like, it's a funny question, but it's a good one. Joe is like, what happens to all of that plaque that's clogging your arteries when you reverse heart disease? Where does it go? Can it break off? Can it throw a clot? I don't know.
Well, so first of all, the plaque in our arteries isn't on top of the blood vessel, okay? It's actually underneath. So what happens is when we develop coronary artery disease, the coronary arteries here, there's a single cell lining here called the endothelium. And what happens is the endothelium starts to become dysfunctional, and we get LDL molecules that migrate underneath it into what's called the subendothelium, and that creates inflammation. So it attracts these inflammatory cells that gobble up all the LDL cholesterol, and the cells die, and it attracts more inflammation, and so all of a sudden you've got like a scar underneath our blood vessel wall. And so the plaque, when we talk about plaque, it's actually not stuck onto, it's not stuck onto the lining of the blood vessel to break off and go somewhere. What happens when you have a heart attack is that plaque actually ruptures. So the plaque, which is underneath, ruptures through the blood vessel wall. And your body forms a blood clot on top of that. That's actually what causes the heart attack, right? And if a piece of that, if it's in your neck, you can get a little piece of that blood that breaks off and you can call it stroke. So strokes and heart attacks don't come from the plaque breaking off per se. It comes from a blood clot that forms on top of the blood vessel wall when that plaque, that subendothelium ruptures, right? And so as we start to heal these plaques, heal these scars, slowly but surely, our bodies will start to resorb that scar tissue. Just like, imagine you fall and you scrape your knee, and there's a scab on top, right? And slowly but surely, as our body starts to heal, we slowly heal the wound underneath. The scab kind of disappears. And it's kind of the same concept. So all that plaque literally gets kind of reabsorbed when Dr. Greger talks about, if you woke up every morning and you hit your shin with a hammer, and you've got this chronic sore, this chronic wound there, right? The answer to that's not taking Advil every day because it hurts. It's to stop hitting your shin with the hammer, right? Well, that's what essentially what we're doing to our blood vessel walls when we eat an unhealthy diet. We're taking a hammer to the blood vessel wall every single day, every meal, when we're eating all this dietary cholesterol and saturated fat and smoke and all that kind of stuff. We're just hammering our blood vessel wall every day. Well, guess what happens when you stop hammering your shin? The wound will heal, and that's exactly what happens with our blood vessels and inside our blood vessels when we stop hitting them with a hammer every day. Our bodies want to heal. We're designed to heal. But it's this constant healing and re-injury, which is actually the root cause of the problem. So when we stop re-injuring the blood vessel and just let it heal, that's when the plaque starts to reverse.
Right. Okay, so note to self, do not hit shin with hammer. Okay, got it. Thank you, Dr. Levis.
Yeah, so it really is, I mean, it is that simple, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, when it comes to something like that, simplicity can be the key. I mean, you can overcomplicate things, you can simplify them, and certainly nobody thinks that hitting their shin with a hammer is a good idea. So.
Well, it's the same thing with many chronic diseases we treat, right? So Chuck, if you were on a medicine to lower your cholesterol, okay, or to lower your blood sugar, and you were having a side effect from that medicine, okay? And I'm your doctor. You come to me and say, Doc, listen, my muscles are really sore. I'm on a statin, and I'm sore all over. What should I do? Would you rather me give you a prescription for another drug to treat the side effect, or would you want me to change the medicine? Well, probably want me to change the medicine, right? Well, all those drugs, drugs for blood pressure, drugs for cholesterol, drugs for sugars, well, they're actually treating the side effect of the most powerful medicine you have available to you, and that's the food you eat. So why in the world would we want to just keep throwing drugs to treat the side effects of the medicine instead of just changing the medicine? This food is medicine. And it's such a simple concept that when I tell that to patients, they're like, holy cow, I never thought of it that way. But it's true. And so when we change the medicine from, the standard American diet, say, to a whole food plant-based diet, well, guess what? The side effects go away. And you don't need these other pills to treat those side effects like type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, hypercholesterolemia, etc. And so again, it really is this, simplicity. I think we overthink and so overcomplicate health today that we just need to make it simple.
That's right. Hey, treat the root cause. But, every time that we have a discussion like that, it reminds me of the story that somebody once told me about how when they changed up their diet, they went on a plant-based diet, they took meat out, and their cholesterol plummets.
Yeah.
But then their doctor advises them to resume eating meat so that they can continue to take the cholesterol-lowering drug. And it's just like,
it's insane.
Really?
It's insane.
No. Yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Doctor's mailbag, since it has a little bit of everything in there, let's bounce around here. Take another question. This one from Ann. Can a vegan diet help someone who suffers from asthma?
Yes, the answer is yes. There's clear evidence around that. And
Yeah.
so the way, so it's interesting. So I used to have asthma. I used to have horrible allergies, seasonal allergies. I went on a plant-based diet about 10, 12 years ago. So maybe you may know my story, but, I had developed, I'd injured my knee playing with my dog, and I didn't do the rehab. I had to wait too much for surgery, so I started gaining weight because I couldn't exercise, and I didn't really do the rehab after surgery. I gained more weight. And next thing I know, I went into atrial fibrillation, and my cholesterol went through the roof, and on and on. So I became a patient. And, my doctors are treating me, they're playing whack-a-mole with my health, frankly. Up pops my cholesterol, here's some pills. Up pops my irregular heart rhythm, there's some more pills, on and on and on. One day I saw forks over night, went plant-based. Well, so 3 or 4 months later, I come out the other end. I expected to lose weight, which I did, 50 pounds. I expected my cholesterol to go down, which it did, 100 points off next. I expected my sleep apnea to get better. It did. It went away.